Welcome to another Winnovative Inside Small Biz CRM quick tip. And today we're going to just take a couple minutes to look at examples of some of the different field types that the ACT CRM system provides. And that's really one of the nice things about the ACT system is that it offers quite a bit of flexibility. So we're in the demo database that comes with ACT 2011. And this layout gives us a nice example of several of the fields and some of the different functionality that we can use to take care of things for us automatically. One thing we notice here is that there's this ellipsis button next to the contact field, and if we click on that, it'll bring up this dialog box that helps you to make sure that the name is parsed correctly. And notice this setting at the bottom. It says automatically show this dialog box if the contact name contains more than two names. So that's on by default, and that's good to have on, because if you put in, let's say, Lance Scott Parker, then ACT is not necessarily sure what the first name is. Some people have a hyphenated first name, or Scott could be the middle name, or in fact Scott Parker could be the last name. So you can use this function to make sure that later on when you need to search for something and you know that his last name is Parker, that you're going to be able to find it and you won't get thrown off if it was Scott Parker. So I'm going to just go ahead and snooze these reminders here. ACT is trying to let us know that we've got some things that we need to take care of, and then I'll cancel out of here. So that's on the contact field. That's a special function. Another special function is the company field, and as we've talked about in some of our other quick tips, and maybe you've used this feature yourself, is that you can link a company record with a contact record. And we notice that in this case Lance is in fact linked to a company record because the text in the company field is blue and underlined to make it look like a hyperlink. So that's another nice visual indication that there's additional information here to look at. Here's an example of a checkbox field. These are handy for the yes/no situations, send card, do not submit or do not solicit. Those are typical selections for a checkbox. And then some of these fields have drop downs. So we see here for title that this drop down gives us an indicator that there's selections that can be here. And when you create your database, or your administrator creates your database, you could set up business rules to say that the user has to select from one of these values, or they could type something else in. But typically if there's standard input, then it's nice to be able to have it standard across the organization, and the user should have to select one of these. One of the other things that can be administratively configured is to whether to allow the user to edit the list and add additional values or delete them. Again, that's probably something that's better left, particularly if you have multiple users. In that case, better left to the assigned administrator. But if you're a single user, then it's probably easier for you to leave that feature on. Now, a little bit different from this title that we looked at is there's another type of drop down function. We notice here an ID status. Now this one has a checkbox next to it, and the reason for that is we can multi-select. We can say that Lance is already signified as a customer, but he also happens to be a friend. So we know that a contact can have multiple ID statuses. He can be both a friend and a customer, and he could be something in addition to that. But typically you're only going to have one title. So that makes sense as to a single choice, single selection pick list versus a multi-selection pick list that we see here. A couple of the other special fields that we can create are email fields, and we can have any number of email fields in an ACT database. It doesn't have to just be one. And so if we click on this, it'll bring up, depending upon our settings, most likely Microsoft Outlook or the ACT email client, depending on how our email is configured, and it'll let us send email and then record it into history right from this field. The website or URL field lets us link to multiple websites or a website, and again we can have one or more fields of that type. Over here on the right hand side we see examples of some of the system maintained fields. These are updated. These date fields are updated automatically by the system. If we were to schedule a meeting or create a history, it will post these. So for example, if I go down to the history tab and I right click and I say record history, and we received a phone call today from Lance. He called us, and I say call received, and put some quick information in here. He wanted to confirm the appointment. Now we notice that the last reach field was updated to the current date. Both last edited and last reach were updated automatically. So even though we can't change these fields, we can do a lookup on them. So they're valuable to try to find information as far as who we spoke to recently. And then one last field that we'll talk about in this particular segment is the memo field. And a memo field is a field that allows us to put in basically unlimited text. I can continue to type in here and go on for quite some time, as much information as I need, and multiple lines, and it'll track that for us. So that's just a quick overview of some of the different field types that are most commonly used in an ACT database. Hope you find that helpful, and be sure to check out the other field types that are available too.